Welcome to our newest episode of the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. And today we will be discussing developing medical education programs internationally and in under-resourced countries. And today we have a very special guest who I have worked with closely when I was training at the American University of Beirut, Dr. Thurayya Arayssi. Dr. Arayssi currently is at Weill-Cornell, Qatar. And she's actually the senior, she's actually a professor of clinical medicine and senior associate dean for medical education and continuing professional development in Qatar. Dr. Arayssi was at the American University of Beirut Medical Center initially, where she was program director of internal medicine, and she was also head of the rheumatology division over there. Then she became assistant dean for graduate medical education at AUB and subsequently moved to Qatar about 12 years ago as assistant dean for GME, and then ascended the ranks to her position currently. And we also have with us Dr. MohammadAli Jardali, who has been with us on the podcast previously, and he is a graduate of the family medicine residency program at the American University of Beirut Medical Center. I think he just graduated a month and a half ago. And is currently looking for jobs in Lebanon. Welcome to both of you, and it's very exciting to have you, Dr. Arayssi, on the podcast and to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time.
Khalid, what a pleasure to reconnect with you after so many years, and congratulations on this amazing podcast, which I've been following actually through social media. It's really very interesting, and I'm very happy to be able to be part of it. Well, Dr. Jardali, so nice to meet you. I've seen your graduation on social media, and congratulations again. I hope you will be able to find a job very quickly. I see that you have a very special, unique background and unique specialties beside medicine. So inshallah, I'm sure that you will be able to find something that fits your needs. So thank you all. But again, it's really an honor to be invited.
Yeah, and it's an honor for us to have you here. And just wanted to discuss first, I know you were in the US initially, did your training, worked there for a while. And then what prompted you to initially move to Lebanon and subsequently get involved in medical education over there?
Well, yeah, I did do my residency and my fellowship in the US. And it's, when I finished my fellowship, it was at a point where I had to make a decision of whether to stay in the US or to return to Lebanon. I think for many of us who are now expats and who had trained in the US, returning to Lebanon and serving the country is always a dream, I have to say. And I was very fortunate, both for my husband and I, we were both very fortunate to be offered actually both of us positions at AUB, which was for us a dream come true, because AUB is an alma mater that for many of us who've trained there, it's very close to our hearts. We want to pay back what AUB has given us. So it was a great opportunity to return. And at that point, really, the decision was not difficult at all. Do you stay in the US or do you return and serve your home country at AUB? And it was very easy for us to make that decision, for my husband and I, and return to AUB. So that was the drive. It's that passion to return. Yeah.
And how did you? Yeah, similar to all of us, I think. And subsequently, how did you get involved in medical education at AUB?
Yeah, that was very an unexpected turn in my career. I was trained as a physician scientist at the NIH. My fellowship was really in clinical research. I was embedded very deeply and heavily in clinical research in the US, specifically at the NIH. And in the back of my head, my dream was returning to AUB is to set up an infrastructure for clinical research. So, but again, I was young and very idealistic at that point. But as soon as I returned to AUB, what struck me most was seeing so many of the students and the residents wanting to leave the country. It was at a time when I was very passionate about returning. But yet, when I hit the ground, it was really appalling to me how many people still want to leave the country. The country was clearly in a different situation than it is right now. It was after the 1990. I returned in late 1997, early 1998. Things were getting better. The economy was starting to improve. So I was struck by that, and I started talking to the students, to the residents, and as you all know, brain drain has so many causes for it, many of which clearly are not under our control as physicians or educators or even leaders in healthcare institutions or universities. But one of them struck me the most, that many of the residents said, if we had a structured residency program that is similar to what's happening in the US, something where we feel we're all getting similar education, where something that might lead eventually to being accredited or getting certified by the American board, then that might help us stay. Because the people also want to feel that they're getting that quality education, that structure. And this was truly the beginning. I was a chief resident during my residency. And I had, that was the beginning, those who've done chief residency, it is usually the beginning of training in leadership. So I had some insight of how do you structure a residency program, went to the chair of the department, who was extremely supportive, and he basically said, go for it. And this is how it started, basically. It started based on perceived needs of the community, of the residents and the students at AUB and in the Department of Medicine. And I think the project was very successful because it met the needs. That was one reason. But I think more importantly is because of the support that I have received from the chair, from the faculty, from the residents themselves. I mean, we talk nowadays about co-production, that idea didn't exist then, but truly it was a co-production of the whole community coming together, and the chair changed and a new chair came in and he was equally supportive as well. And so it built a community that grew beyond the Department of Medicine into the institution. And I was asked then to move from the department to the leadership position at the Faculty of Medicine to help build the infrastructure for the institution for all of the residency program. So it was an opportunity, basically. People ask, did you continue to do research? Yes, I did continue to do research, and I still continue to do research. But clearly, I became more of a clinician educator rather than a clinician scientist, and my career continued in that direction.
As a recent AUBMC graduate, I can attest that almost all programs now are ACGMEI accredited, and it's something that a lot of the residents are proud of at AUB. And you discussed how you did a fellowship at the NIH and how you did the chief residency year. And I wanted to ask you, what is the role of the chief resident year in the medical education journey? Because there is no fellowship in medical education, right? So, so how do you see the path into medical education?
No, there are fellowships in medical education per se, but you're asking at AUB, I guess there was no fellowship in medical education. When I was there, I believe there is now, and I can't talk to that, but I can tell you that the chief residency is actually one of the most, in my mind, it's a very important stepping stone towards leadership, future leadership in medicine. So chief residents, can be involved in medical education, but can be involved in many other things. They can be involved in quality, for example. They can be chief residents for outpatient. When I was at AUB, actually, there was a chief residency before, but I strengthened it significantly. And what happens in chief residency is that it's very big. The relationship becomes very interesting between program director and the chief residents, because it also goes beyond what the chief resident does. It becomes also a mentorship relationship between the program director and the chief residents. And up to now, actually, I have a very close relationship with the chiefs. We call them my chiefs, who were when I was a program director. So I think it's a very important here. Whoever agrees or decides to become a chief resident, I think they need to have the passion for work, and they need to be willing to become, if you wish, future leaders. I think chief residency years would be also a little bit more helpful. If it's a little bit more organized and focuses a little bit more in a formal way on the development of leadership skills, in a more formal way of the chief residents, because this is how I see it. And if you see a lot of people who've had future positions in medical education or otherwise, if you look back at their careers, you find many of them actually have been chief residents. So I hope I answered a little bit of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you did. It's like a small group of chief residents who become like the future leaders, like you said, whether it be medical education or other lines of leadership. It makes sense, definitely.
And then I remember, you were program director of internal medicine at AUB when I was doing my medical school and then internship there. I know how much the chief residents, a lot of them, I know you're still very much in contact with. Some of them are back in Lebanon. Some of them are all over the world now. And so what prompted you? I know like Weill-Cornell was opening in Qatar, right? And then you moved there, I think, when it was opening up, right? So how did you decide to end up moving there?
Well, I see myself as a builder, and it was a fantastic opportunity to be able to participate in building a new program in Qatar. And it was really the first medical school. So building a new program, building the first medical school, and also building something in the region. I'm very passionate about building the healthcare workforce in the region, trying to maintain the healthcare workforce in the region. So it was truly, I felt it was a wonderful opportunity and honor to have been asked actually to be recruited to go to Weill-Cornell in Qatar.
Do you have for international programs, and what advice do you have maybe for under-resourced countries, given your experience?
I think clearly one of the major decisions that has to be made is whether there's a need, right? And why are we building a medical education program? Because the worst thing that could happen is one would be investing in in building a program, and then the students or the residents who are graduating are not staying in the country, but they are leaving. And I'm not talking about the situation now in Lebanon. I'm talking in general, of course, because there isn't enough, you're producing more physicians than what the country needs. So I think establishing a need for the healthcare workforce is key. And the second piece is making, as one builds a medical education program, ensuring that that medical education program links to the needs also of the healthcare and the healthcare workforce. I think, both of you are practicing physicians, and I'm sure you observe the same thing that I observe, which is we continue to see silos between undergraduate medical education, graduate medical education, and continuing professional development. In the ideal world, if you're building something new, it would be very important from the get-go to be able to have a seamless, basically, transition, even intellectually, as you're building something between all of those three sections in the continuing of the medical education. So just to directly answer your question, I think identifying that there is need for more workforce, and ensuring that the students who are graduating whatever you are teaching them is actually aligned to the needs of the healthcare in the area, in the country, in the region that you are building this new, a new program.
And I think you've built a great program. I mean, slowly, I think it's been up and coming, and a lot of the medical students who are graduating from over there are actually ending up moving to the United States or other countries for training in very good programs. And I guess also you were involved not only in Qatar, right? You were also involved in building or helping build medical education programs in other countries too.
Well, I have worked regionally with other countries regionally in more as in an advising capacity, basically. But definitely, I mean, when there's an opportunity basically to share our experiences regionally, why not, right? I mean, it's always a plus. I mean, ultimately, the world now is very open and very global, and what happens. This is how I look at the world. What happens in one part of the world affects the other. Look what's happening with the pandemic right now. So if we can all participate and work together to improve the quality of medical education, ensure that we share resources, we share expertise, I think that's the way, in my mind, we should be working together.
Right. And I think it's relatively easier when there's a lot of resources in a country. How do you think what do you think are the barriers to building good medical education programs in under-resourced countries?
Yeah, of course, resources are important. I think the most important thing, to be honest with you, is vision. Vision doesn't need resources. So, having the right vision, basically, what I'm going to say is going to sound very minimalistic, but really going to the basics is having the right vision, having the right team, basically to build, realizing that you need to build an infrastructure. Making sure that you recruit the right faculty, that you recruit the right students, whatever is the need for the country. I think those are the basics. And of course, I'm not underestimating the need of the resources, but the resources alone are not sufficient actually to make a strong program. So just deciding to build a medical school because one wants to build a medical school, I don't think that's enough, even if you have all of the money in the world. So and I think this is what's made the program here so successful. There's a very important vision actually beyond our success actually that has made us so successful, and the outcome of our students be, as you said, Khalil, they're doing extremely well, outside Qatar and inside Qatar. So, yeah.
What you said really makes sense, especially about like the full picture of undergraduate medical education, graduate medical education, and continuing medical education. We tend to think of them as fragmented sections when you're right, there is like a full continuum. So I really like what you said. And I wanted to ask you, maybe we can transition a little bit to talk about like the role of new media and specifically digital education. Right now, we're hosting a podcast. You're very active on Twitter, LinkedIn. So how do you see the role of new media and digital education maybe in democratizing medical education in general?
I have to say I am a novice in social media. I keep trying to learn how to have a better voice on social media. So I'm getting better. I think it's a skill that my generation doesn't come to us naturally. I learn a lot from my younger colleagues and my student. I call this reverse mentoring, and I think it's really important in, right now in this century at this time, actually, to learn about, the digital media from the younger generation. But I'm getting there, so thank you for noticing that I am in social media. I'm work in progress when it comes to that. But no, absolutely, I am. I do follow, by the way, and I'm going to look back and tell you how that would fit. I do follow many of the Med Twitter. I want to call them experts because I see myself as a novice, actually. For example, there's a physician in Boston. I'm not going to be saying, advertising for anyone, but I think he's awesome. And he writes about pathophysiology, and I follow him on Twitter because this is how I remind myself on regular basis about the pathophysiology of diseases that I don't even basically deal with anymore. But as still I'm an internist at heart, so that kind of helps me keep up and remind myself about the pathophysiology of, hepatitis or gallbladder disease or interstitial pneumonitis or. So I also listen to podcasts. There are several podcasts, for example, that I listen to where they summarize articles from journals. And I'm sure you're the same. As many physicians, we really don't have the time to be able to read all of the journals to come our way. So I listen to them. So how does it link back to, to answer your question? I think there are specific quality evidence-based podcasts, individuals who tweet that should be or could be highlighted as resources for our students to go to as they are learning in a specific course or in a specific clerkship. Having said that, I don't think as a medical education community in general, we are ready, all of us are ready to take that step forward. I think many of us in education, in medicine in general, we like tradition. And tradition is good. Believe me, I love so many things about tradition of education. Yet, I think there's a lot of good things that are happening. I think the biggest challenge is how do you curate this material and hand it over to a student and to a resident so that that this material that's curated is of high quality versus, especially for a student, I worry more about the student and the residents versus them just going all over and not being able to decipher what is good and what is fake, basically. So I think it would be lovely. I mean, that's something that I've thought about this time, but at some point, but we've never had the opportunity to implement, is having a structured way, how we review journals, having a structured way to review, Twitter tweets or to review podcasts or, to say those are peer reviewed, right? And in a very structured way, and then be able to curate them and have them all pulled together in a resource where then they could be a go-to place for our students and our residents. So yes, they're very important, but they have to be of high quality. And we as educators have to be comfortable pointing the students to them. So
I think that the American College of Physicians gives credits actually for a few podcasts. If you listen to them and sign in on the ACP website, they give you credit. So I think there is a move in the direction of accrediting the high quality podcast that you're talking about. I definitely agree. But as someone who comes from an engineering background, I'm still surprised at how rigid the medical establishment is sometimes and how it resists change. It still surprises me, but we are moving in that direction, definitely.
I mean, I like the tension. I think the tension is important because we take care of people, right? So that tension is having people who are resisting and having people who are early adopters. I think that tension really keeps us kind of in the middle, as long as we don't get stuck there and move forward. But I think there's also a value for that tension at the same time.
Right. And I think, I mean, and you can see how rigid they are because a lot of the societies in medicine, I think they've been very slow to adopt, let's say, Twitter or LinkedIn, and they have very few followers, but they are building it up over time. And one of the things that came up to me last time I was reading it is that if papers that are published and posted on social media or reshared widely actually are cited much more frequently than papers that are not shared as much on social media. So, and just before we end, I think I was just going to take your advice or the advice that you have for medical colleges in under-resourced countries. I mean, I know it's hard, and probably in Lebanon right now, that's what worries some of us too, is with the limitation of the resources in Lebanon. What would be your advice for the universities or colleges there to try to maintain the level of education that they have maintained over the past 20 or 30 years?
I think try to maintain the infrastructure and try to maintain and support the faculty, basically. The faculty is the core, is the spirit of, we are a university. University is made of faculty and students. So I think trying one's best to maintain the infrastructure and maintain the faculty are key, especially in a place like, home in Lebanon at this point, to maintain that quality. And one, to be very deliberate about always thinking about the quality. It can go to the wayside, but I think, diverting in a very deliberate manner some of the resources towards that, even in under-resourced, there are always going to be decisions made of where do you divert the resources, but also ensuring that the mission of education does not slip, because typically, education is the weakest link. Thinking about it, being deliberate about it, keeping that infrastructure despite the challenges, I think, and taking care of the faculty. I think this, in my mind, those are very important as one transition from the crisis situation right now that's happening in Lebanon to, inshallah, a better place in, soon.
Yeah, I agree.
Inshallah. So inshallah soon. So being deliberate, being aware, and not losing sight of, that mission needs some funding for it. And I know that's not difficult. I know that's not easy. I'm sorry. I know that's very difficult. But
yeah, currently, I think in the situation, it's a bit difficult, but hopefully people will adjust to the crisis and potentially try to come out of it.
And people who go into education, I think they are passionate about it. They love, they go for it for the mission. As you know, people in education, they're typically not after, generating high income. So realizing that, I think that's also important, because you want to keep those people who will gonna hold that mission and keep it floating until the situation improves.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to both. Thanks to both of you for being on this podcast, and I hope people learned about developing medical education programs in multiple different countries with different resources. So thanks to both of you for being on this podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to have the opportunity to see both of you and chat with both of you on such an important topic.
This was great. I learned so much, and I really enjoyed your systems thinking and big picture. It was really good.
Thank you.